Alright, welcome to Hansen Speed Shop. Thanks for stopping by today for another custom Hot Wheels build. If you're wondering what this pile of half-finished junk is that's sitting here, well, it started out as an old beat-up Hot Wheels 32 Ford Sedan delivery that I started on a project doing. I was going to do kind of a patinaed old hot rod. I started this project a long time ago, and it just really went south. Ran into a lot of problems. It wasn't turning out how I wanted to, so I kind of mothballed this whole thing. But I'm going to kind of use all the stuff that went wrong with this to my advantage now, and we're going to talk about that right now. So what went wrong with this project was I first tried to paint it one color and it did not turn out how I wanted to. And as you know, with these this fender and interior piece is plastic, so it's kind of a pain in the butt to strip once you've already painted it. So you basically got to try to sand all that old paint off. And I tried using some chemicals to get the paint off, and it started to kind of not really like eat through the plastic, but it started to kind of crackle and shrivel the plastic, I guess you could say. So that was, I tried to repair that and it just didn't look very good. And then I painted it black, and then as you can see, it turned out kind of like the primer started coming through, and it's kind of looks crinkly and really crappy. And the body's not too bad actually, but my idea for this car now, since it looks really kind of old and junky, is I want to do like an old gangster car or like an old moonshine running car from back in like the 30s, that's maybe got some bullet holes in it or something, and then it's been sitting in like a garage or an old barn since like the 30s or 40s, and then got dug out as of recent and turned into a really cool hot rod. So that's what we're going to do with this car. So everything on the car is going to be kind of weathered and kind of crappy looking, but that's okay because that's the look we're going for. So since this thing's already all torn apart, we'll take a look at what we're going to do. These are my original wheels that I was wanting to run on here, which are these old vintage style Matchbox wheels. We're going to go with the black with the chrome center cap, and then these are the slightly smaller ones up front, and then I'll detail that outer ring black to match the back. But those are the wheels we're going to be going with. Basically what we have to do on the chassis is just detail it out, give it that old kind of weathered look, like this thing's been sitting around for quite some time. The body's pretty shiny, so we're gonna have to weather that up. And I've got an idea. This project's gonna be kind of a way to do some experimenting because I really don't have anything to lose if it doesn't work out. So I've got an idea that might work for some cool bullet hole effects, and we're going to try that out, or try a couple different things out. If it doesn't work out, it'll just kind of add to the look of the car. But we got to make that body look a little bit crappier than it does already, and then just kind of finish out the fenders and interior, and weather the grill and headlights and stuff. But hopefully by the time this project's done, we should have a really neat car, and I'll be able to know if some of my ideas for making this thing look the way I want to are going to work or not. So the next step is basically going to be just diving right into this and getting it detailed, and trying to make it look like a cool old shot up gangster car. So we'll take another look at it once I make some more progress. Alright gang, so before I get too much more involved in our 32 Ford Sedan Gangster Getaway Barnfind build that we're doing here, I just want to talk about how I've gotten to where we are at right now. First, I just want to say that if you're just getting into this hobby of customizing die-cast or Hot Wheels or whatever, the easiest thing to get into to start off doing is patinaed cars or weathered cars. It's really the easiest thing to do, because it may look like it takes a lot more to make a car look old and crappy, but it's actually a lot easier to make a car look shitty than it is to make a car look really nice. Because when you're trying to make a car look really nice, any little mistake that you make stands out like a sore thumb. When you're making a car look crappy and weathered and rusty, the mistakes actually add to the car, make it look more realistic to what you're trying to achieve. So my advice is, if you're trying to get into this, start off with just doing kind of some maybe like weathered cars or rat roddy cars, Barnfind cars, kind of maybe an old car that's been sitting outside. It's really super easy to do. I'm going to talk about how I got this car to look the way that it looks so far. It's not done yet, but what I did was first, the fenders on here were kind of crappy to begin with. They had some cracks in them and they were kind of crinkled up from when I tried to strip them earlier. I painted over that, didn't try to fix it at all, just painted over that with some red primer, scuffed the body up and painted over that with red primer also, and then went over the top of that with some gloss black. And I let that dry for a couple days, and then I went over the fenders and the body with some 00 steel wool. You could use some real fine sandpaper too, but I found the steel wool actually is a little bit easier to use, and it covers better and doesn't sand through as much as sandpaper does. And then I basically just kept scuffing it up till I got it to the look that I wanted to. Then I wanted to add some bullet holes to this car because I wanted this car to be kind of like it was kind of a getaway car, and it kind of got shot up with maybe a Tommy gun or something back in the 30s, and then got stowed away in a barn or something, and it's been sitting there till now. So for the bullet holes, I've seen a lot of people do a couple different things. Probably the most common thing I see people do is drilling holes in the body. And I thought about doing that myself, but the problem with that is the holes people are drilling that I've seen they look huge. Like, I don't know, was a tank shooting at the car or what? But it just didn't have the look that I wanted. So to get a more realistic caliber hole in the body, what I just use is one of these pin vices or a center punch. Basically just put it where you want it on the body, pop it in, and it'll make a little indent. And then what I also did on this body is I've used some of this Tester's rust, and then I put a little dab in each bullet hole, and then kind of ran some down like the rust is running down the body, and then also added some rust in areas where I thought the car would be kind of rusty, in the door jambs, on the sill here, and on the bottom sides of the fenders, and some of the creases, just to make that look more realistic. Basically just kind of put it wherever you think it looks aesthetically pleasing, or where you think it would be rusty. It's kind of, like I said, these type of builds are really fun and easy because there really isn't a right or wrong way of doing it. So we're going to keep going on this car. I hope you guys dig this one. It's a little bit different than what I normally do, but I really like the car, having fun doing it, doing some experimenting, and we'll take another look at it once I make some more progress. Alright guys, so we're going to try something a little bit different here than what I normally do on my builds, and that's kind of take you along for the ride of how I'm going to detail the chassis on this car. So the first thing that you want to do when you're doing any kind of a patinaed car is start off with how the car would have looked originally. So I painted this thing basically just nice, how it would have looked from the factory, with the exception of the exhaust is all black because back then the steel they would have used on exhaust would have just been bare steel, and it just kind of instantly turned to rust. So it doesn't pay to paint that silver since we're going to make it look rusty. But the gas tank and bumpers look nice. Everything else is flat black. And then painted the oil pan. The early flatheads are kind of a greenish color. So that's what I did on there, and tranny silver. But basically just make it look like how it would have looked brand new from the factory to start with. You don't want to get too carried away also when you're doing a patinaed car, a wastelands car, rat rod, or whatever you want to call it. Because you don't want to be that guy that makes the rusty Corvette. I mean, some people get really like carried away and start not thinking. Just got to make it crappy. Got to make it look rusty. It's got to look like it came out of somebody's butt. I mean, you don't want to be that guy that overdoes it, because, you know, if that car was real, I could go up to it and touch it and it would turn to dust. And, you know, stuff like that doesn't really even exist. You can't drive something that's that crappy. So don't overdo it. So start with how it would have looked from the factory, and then weather it to the state that you want it to, that looks still aesthetically pleasing, but would still be something that could actually function. So for this, we're just going to use some of this Tester's rust, and that's going to be about it for weathering this. Alright guys, so here we go. So now when you're doing this rust, you kind of want to, if you just kind of dab it on like that, it obviously looks really crappy. So you want to put some paint on and then just keep working it in. The more you work it in, it'll kind of thin out. And if you put too much on, you can always go back over it with some flat black. That'll kind of dull it back down. But you just got to kind of keep working it in. Like I put a little bit too much on. Now, also when you're doing, if you're doing a lot of these kind of rusty cars, patina, gasland, whatever you want to call these type of builds, I feel personally that people's techniques can become very sloppy and kind of relaxed, because you don't have to be that precise when you're doing some of this stuff. If you kind of go outside the line, so to speak, or put a little bit too much on, or make it look crappy, just kind of adds to the build. And when you go to do a really nice high-end looking car, your technique is not going to be that great. But as you can see, basically just kind of apply it where you want it, and then just keep working it until you dull it down. You don't want it to look like you just globbed it on there. So we'll be doing the whole exhaust, kind of make the tranny look a little bit weathered. You don't want it to look too crappy, because this car is supposed to look like something that could still be drivable. So we want it to look old and crusty, but not like you just pulled it out of a swamp. So we're going to go through, do the whole chassis with the rust. And we'll be going back through with some flat black in some areas and dull some of the rust areas down. This rust also works best if you do it over flat black, I've noticed. But basically, you guys kind of get the idea of what I'm doing. I'm going to do all the rust, and then I'll show you when I go back through with the flat black. Alright guys, so taking a look at our chassis, it's starting to come along pretty good. It's definitely got a kind of rusted, old weathered look to it. And honestly, you could probably stop right here if you wanted to, but we're not going to. Now again, I talked about we don't want to overdo it, make this thing look too crappy. But it just kind of right now looks not super realistic, I guess, to say. So the first thing that we're going to do is go over this thing with some more flat black to kind of dull some of the rust that we put on there. Again, kind of having your brush be a little bit drier is going to be more helpful on this. So we're going to kind of Just go over. It's easier to have the brush be a little bit dry and not put so much on. You can always add more if you need to. I'll put some paint on the brush tip, then I'll wipe it some off, kind of get the brush kind of dry, so that we just are putting a very little bits of paint onto where we want it. So we'll take another look at that once I get this part of it. All right, guys, so this, I don't have all my lighting on because I think this might be easier to see without having the light being so blinding. We're not done yet, but what I've went through now and done is added some of the black, making like the transmission, the oil pan, and the gas tank and stuff look kind of greasy, dulled down any of the shiny rust. Now I've went through and with some orange, I've added that in some areas just because rust does have a little bit of an orange hint to it, or shade in some cases. So just so that all the rust isn't the same color, I added some orange, and then we're going to dull the orange down now with some more of the rust and some flat black. So this process is just a lot of going back and forth to get it to look like basically how you want it. There's, again, like I said, no right or wrong way to do this. It's just kind of you just keep doing it till you get to where you want it to look. Once I get that done, we'll have one more step left, and this chassis should be done being patinaed. Alright guys, so now we're to the final step. Here's a look at our chassis so far. Looks pretty crappy, but that's kind of the point. Again, I'm not claiming to be an expert at this style of painting or this style of build, but I just want to show everybody kind of how I do it, and that I can hang with the boys, you know, as far as any type of build. I just usually choose to do show type cars, hot rods, muscle cars, gassers, drag cars, custom vans, not so much the ratty kind of stuff, but I can do it. Definitely a little bit out of my comfort zone, but again, this is pretty simple. If you're going to get into doing customs, there's different levels of, you know, everything, but this is probably the easiest thing to get started at, and then kind of build up and doing a little bit more detailed patinaed cars, and then working into more show looking cars, I guess you could say. So for the final step of this is just to kind of make it looks rusty and greasy now, but it doesn't have that dirty look. So for that, I usually use this flat khaki craft paint. And then again with this, we're not going to go over the top, and we don't want to put a lot on at a time. So I usually will get my brush tip with some paint on it, and I'll wipe the majority of it off, get the brush kind of dry, and then just start kind of working it in, and start making the bottom look dirty. And then you want to just keep working it in and thin it out as much as possible. And then we'll kind of go over the whole bottom doing this. If we get areas that look too khaki colored, we'll go back and thin that out with some more flat black. Alright gang, so here is our finished product. It pretty much looks like something that has been laying in a barn for 50, 60, 80 years, or however long it's been, which is exactly what we wanted. Again, I could keep going on this, but we don't want to get too carried away. We kind of got to know when to stop and walk away from it. Again, sometimes it helps to put our body next to it, and that'll kind of give us a good look of if we've gone too far or not far enough. I think we've went just far enough, We don't need to make it look any more crappy than it already is. Has the perfect amount done to it. So all that's going to be left now for this build is to detail out our grill insert here, our grill insert and headlights. And then our wheels need to get detailed. I'm probably going to have to make a custom axle for the front. And then put this thing together. I might detail out the windows a little bit, kind of give them a little bit of a dirt look to them, as they look a little bit maybe too clean, I guess. But then that's going to do it for this build. And we'll check the thing out at the final unveil. So we'll see you guys there. Alright gang, it's time for the final unveil on our 32 Ford Gangster Getaway Barnfind car. This car is supposed to be a car that was part of a midnight liquor run back in the 1930s. It went terribly wrong, got shot up, and then stowed away in a barn so the guys could hide out, and just kind of sat there and rotted until modern times where the car got dug back out and got put back on the road, but kept all of its old crusty Barnfind patina. So this thing came out looking absolutely awesome, super cool. Just kind of weathered the hell out of this thing to give it the look that I wanted. Super happy with it. Started off with a Hot Wheels 32 Ford Sedan delivery that was part of a project that I was doing that just kind of went south. And was left with a casting that was kind of a little bit too crappy to do something high-end and super nice with. So I thought I'd put a bunch of bullet holes in it and make it look even more crusty. Basically, didn't do any modifications to this car other than the bullet holes. And then basically you guys seen how I pretty much weathered everything. And this is the final look of what all of our work paid off for. So as you see, I'm running the Matchbox, the old spoked wheels, a little bit smaller up front, and a little bit taller out back, just to give it that kind of hot rod look and a little bit of a rake to it. Here's a look at the front of the car, the top side of the car. Here's a look at the passenger side of the car. Thing looks really cool. Really happy with this one. If you guys dig it, give it a thumbs up, comment below, let me know what you think of it, share this video, and if you're not already a subscriber, hit that subscribe button. Like I talked about, I kind of made the windows in the car look a little bit dirty. That came out looking really good. Here's a look underneath the car, super crusty and rusty and greasy. Just what we wanted. That looks really good. So that is the 32 Sedan delivery Gangster Getaway Barnfind car. I hope you guys dug this one. Stick around for some more pictures of the car. Otherwise, until next time, get out, work on your own projects, get your hands dirty and greasy, stay cool, and we'll catch you cats on the next one. Thanks for watching.